Welcome all to this Subject Overview and Scrutiny Committee 3 meeting, which has been convened as a hybrid meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed subsequently. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing it either from the Council Chamber, Civic Offices, Angel Street, Bridgend, or from remote locations. Should I, as Chair, experience any technical difficulties during the meeting, Councillor Colin Davis will step in to take over temporarily as Chair in my absence, and in his absence, Councillor Graham Walter will step in. Please can everyone ensure that their mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will receive an electronic copy of the agenda, and I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Officers and members are reminded to refer to the page number contained in the public version of the agenda report pack. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch off their cameras on at this point. But I would ask that, with the exception as myself as Chair, at all other times you keep your camera and microphone switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference. Whether attending in the chamber or remotely, if any member or officer wishes to raise a point or question, they should press the hands up icon on the screen at the top right-hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in the order I receive requests. If you are in the chamber, please switch on the microphone on your desk and speak directly into the mic to allow those who are remote to hear you clearly. Please lower your hand once you have finished speaking. The instant messaging chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use the microphones until I invite you to do so. We shall now move on to item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. So I've received apologies for absence from Councillor Mike Kern.
I don't see any other indications, so hopefully everybody's attending. Item 2, declarations of interest. Has any member got a declaration of interest? I have a hand there. Councillor Melanie Evans, please.
Thank you, Chair. This might be belt and braces, but I'd like to declare a personal interest on item 3 as a Pencoed Town Councillor and a Community Governor for Pencoed Comprehensive and Croisty Primary School. Thank you very much indeed, and throughout the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't see any other hands raised or anybody indicating. So we'll move on. Item 3, approval of the minutes. Now, if you've took time to read the papers, you'll see there's quite a few minutes to approve. So, no, we're not, because certainly not here. What I'll do, I'll go through each one individually, the dates. I'll someone can move and second them, basically. That'll do. Can I have a mover for the minutes, the 26th of the 9th, 22, last September?
Move.
Second. Yeah. Anybody got anything to add or any amendments you'd like to make? I don't see any indications. Okay. Could I have a mover and a seconder for the minutes of the 14th of the 11th, 22, last November, please?
Move.
Second. Any objections to that? I don't see any. Okay. Could I have a mover, please, and a seconder for the minutes from the 12th of the 12th, 22 to last December? Move. Thank you, Councillor Pratt.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. See no other indications. Okay, we should move on. Mover and a seconder for the minutes dated the 4th of the 1st, 2023 and the 23rd of the 1st, 2023 it's got on here. So I'm assuming they go together for some reason. The two separate meetings. Okay, we'll do the first one first. 4th of the 1st, please.
Move.
Councillor Betzer, thank you.
Second.
Councillor Williams, thank you. And the last one, and certainly not least, the 23rd of the 1st, 2023. Mover, please.
Move.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. That concludes item 3. Now we shall move on to item 4, an update on the Shared Prosperity Fund. I will now ask officers to briefly present the report. Sorry? Hand up. I got Councillor, I got 2 hands up now. Councillor Melanie Evans, you're first, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm trying to get my camera on there. Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I just wanted some clarification a little bit, because as I'm still a relatively new councillor with only 1 year's service under my belt, I just need to understand, and hoping someone can clarify, why we are actually moving and seconding, approving minutes 9 months on from when the meetings took place. I wonder if someone could help me understand that, please.
I shall ask that question about scrutiny team. Any reason for that, Lucy? Why?
Thank you, Chair. Oh, I think Mel, come on, sorry.
Sorry? Oh, Meryl, you got the answer, Meryl, please?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, there has been a period of where we've had vacancies in the team, and we've been carrying a vacancy for over a year, and then we had new staff and training, and so there was a backlog of minutes, as Councillor Evans says, and there has been an effort to get back everything we can and get them to this meeting to bring us up to date, and obviously we endeavour to not be in that position for the future because we're now fully staffed. So that's really the explanation for that, so Chair.
Okay, thank you, Meryl. Councillor Nora Clark, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, yeah.
On the minutes of the 23rd of January 2023, if I was not mistaken, I think Councillor Ian Williams seconded, but Ian Williams wasn't present at that meeting.
So there's a mistake on the minutes then, basically. Councillor Clark, yeah?
No, well, was Councillor Ian Williams there? If he was there, then yes, he can second them. But if he wasn't there, then no, he wouldn't be able to second them. So
Councillor Ian Williams is down as not being there, yet he's sure it was Ian Williams and not Martin Williams? It is Ian Williams, is it?
No, it wasn't Martin, it was Ian.
No. Okay. But we'd have to check the tapes on that, I suppose, to make sure what happened, wouldn't we? There's only way to resolve, unless Meryl can cast some light on it.
Chair, I think what Councillor Clark is saying is if Councillor Ian Williams wasn't at that meeting, he shouldn't second or move the minutes. Yeah. Perhaps we could have another councillor who is willing to second or move the minutes. Thank you.
Chair,
Exactly.
I withdraw my seconding then. I withdraw that.
Seconded.
I withdraw that then.
Councillor Williams withdrawn. Yeah, I understand what you're saying now. Yeah, he's seconded minutes. Meeting he wasn't in. That's fair. Thank you for pointing that out to us, Councillor Clark. Can I have we've had a mover. Who moved those minutes? Councillor Pratt moved the minutes that they're referring to.
I'll second the minutes.
And Councillor Bledsoe seconded the minutes. We're back on track now. Is that okay? Bit of confusion there. I hope we sorted that out. Okay, yeah. So we're going on to the shared prosperity fund, the update. Who is going to present this to the committee, please? Janine Nightingale, Director, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do believe now that we've had an email from Scrutiny saying that we are no longer required to present the report to you. So I'm not sure how you want to play this. I can give you a very, very quick synopsis of what's in that report, but I've been told we're not allowed to present it to you now. It's for you to just now go straight to questions, Chair. What would you like to do? Would you like a 60-second update?
I think as a person, I'm again shaking the heads in the chamber. If you are right, there was an email went round describing what you said. Yeah. If it was to say absolutely nothing on them, I'm not quite sure. Is that, Lucy? If you could give a very brief, but are you happy for a 60-second sort of? Is everyone happy with that? Councillor Bledsoe?
Can I just ask why that advice was given? Then I don't understand.
This has come about because of the length of time of meetings, and the officers virtually going through each individual report verbatim, which wasn't felt as necessary because you've had the papers previously. And you're expected to read them, basically, Councillor Bledsoe, and that's why. Janine, have I got that right?
Yes, Chair. I think that was the case. I personally think it's quite handy to have a short presentation. a short presentation. However, we've been advised that to allow for more time for questions. You are right,
Yeah.
Chair, we move. But if you would like a very quick update, I could just give you one
well,
a
because we've
60-second update.
because the agenda is quite short. I make a rule in here, Chair, Janine, because the agenda is very short. We'll allow a short update on from yourself before we start. Is that okay?
Okay, no, yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine
short.
then.
Brief, obviously, very briefly. Yeah.
That it will be very brief, Chair.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so in essence, the reason we're here today is to give you an update on the Shared Prosperity Fund. And you will recall Scrutiny, we came to you about a year ago, saying that we'd gained this funding from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, 23 million, to be phased over 3 years. And this report today will just outline what's happened in year one, what progress we've had, and we're about to launch a grant scheme which contributes against the 3 main objectives of the Shared Prosperity Fund. So we'd like to tell you a little bit more about that and what we've achieved on the grant programme, really, and to share your views on the progress so far. It's a very innovative grant scheme. It's the first time it's been done in the UK, so just to have some scrutiny. Now, what I want you to acknowledge, though, Scrutiny, is there is a report going tomorrow to Cabinet asking for authorisation to start the grant schemes, to delegate authority to myself. That's not why we're here today. We're here today to give an update on the Shared Prosperity Scheme. Tomorrow is about getting a delegated authority to enable me to implement the schemes, the grant schemes. So just a little point of clarity, Chair, and I think the report is pretty self-explanatory, really. It goes through what we have achieved, and we're very happy. I'm here today with Zach Shell is online, and I've also got Ian Sherwood with me, and of course we've got our Cabinet member, Councillor Neil O'Farr, who's in the chamber with you. So we're happy to answer any questions the committee would have.
Okay, thank you for that very brief, concise report, Janine. I've got Councillor Jonathan Pratt. He's the first off the.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On page 46, 3.1, it says, as the agreement for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund was not received and signed off until the 28th of March 2023, it's not possible for BCBC to undertake projects and schemes in year one as planned. Unfortunately, I was in a position, I did contact the Wales office to see what their view of it is, but I haven't received a reply from them yet either, so I am going in blind on this. Was there an issue with that? Why did it take so long? And is there a proportion of blame, either be that on UK government or on BCBC, on why it took so long to sign the agreement off? Thank you, Chair.
Do we have someone to take that?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that, Chair. I know I've got Ian and Zach with me, but in essence, we had to put together our investment plan to send through to Rhondda Cynon-Taf. Rhondda Cynon-Taf are acting on behalf of the region with the investment plan. So everything went in from us, and it went through RCT, and it went to UK government. And for whatever reason, I'm afraid, UK government did not give us the go-ahead. We had an agreement letter through in late January, and it was agreed in March. Now, this is not dissimilar, dare I say, to quite a lot of grant schemes that come from UK Gov and dare I say Welsh Government. Sometimes they just don't come through in a timely manner, and we just can't get the money spent. Now, what I will say is we took the view in Bridgend Council, and a couple of other regions did, that we weren't going to spend at risk. We were not going to start schemes in year one until we had that letter through that said the money was approved. Now, some authorities, including RCT themselves, did start the scheme, did appoint officers without the agreement, and did start some schemes early. But we didn't feel we were able to take that risk because we were not in a financial position to be able to do those schemes without the grant. So unfortunately, when the grant did land, very disappointingly, came within, I think it was something 9 weeks at the end of the year, and we had to spend all the money. Well, of course, we weren't in a position to do that. So what we have now asked is, can we have year one money rolled forward into year two so we don't lose that funding? and then we're going to need to spend it within year 2. So it wasn't ideal, but we're asking, can we have the money? And we're waiting for a decision, hopefully in July, on that. We're not the only authorities in the same position. All of us, had the agreement in January, and and then couldn't start till March. So not ideal, but not unusual. And another example, if I may give it to you, Councillor Pratt, is the Levelling Up Fund. We have received 18 million for the pavilion, the Grand Pavilion, in Porthcawl, and 6 months later, we've only just received, 6 months later, the written agreement of that funding. So whilst the announcement was made at the beginning of the year, we've only just had the written agreement. And again, we've been doing things, dare I say, at risk behind the scenes without acknowledgement of the money. But it's a difficult thing to do. What do you do? Do you proceed on the verbal, or do you wait for the written agreement? So this happens quite a lot. But I can see Zach has got his hand up. Maybe Zach would have a little bit more information on this scheme for you. But yes, but hopefully we won't lose the year 1 monies if they roll them forward.
Okay, thank you, Janine. Zach?
Yeah, it was only one small point, and I was just really probably going to speak on behalf of Yayan in thank you, really. I mean, his teams, Yayan and his associated teams have worked really hard to stick to all the deadlines in terms of preparation for the various submissions that have had to be made along the way. And I can specifically remember one more recent remodel that had to be done, where Yayan worked on his annual leave to get that in. So, I think the teams have been very sort of religious in terms of doing the returns to enable, the schemes to move forward. But unfortunately, as Janine's described, what is outside of our hands is that they take a long time to give us the approvals. But hopefully, what will be allowed is the roll forward. But we are still awaiting that. Hasn't been confirmed.
Okay, thank you, Zach. I have next Nora Clark next, please. Councillor Clark, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. With the roll forward, obviously there's no guarantee of year 1 coming into year 2. What are the risks of not completing the projects by year 2 because you've only got 9 months? Even if you kick it off now, we've only got 9 months left. So will there be slippage, and what thoughts are there on that? And if I could ask a question on 3.8 whilst I'm on, if that's okay, Chair?
Yes, carry on, yeah.
Regarding the property improvement grant, is that fully funded for those wanting to upgrade their properties, or is it only part funded? Thank you.
You taking this one, Janine?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Clark. I'll answer in part, and then I'm going to have to pass over, I think, to Zach and Yayan. What we are going to do, or what we are trying to do, is to reprogram that year 1. So once we get the go-ahead, we can undertake that project work in year 2. You are correct. There are risks to that, of course, because again, we're in June. And the time clock is going. It depends if they allow us to roll over year 1 for the whole of year 2, or whether they'll let us roll it on for the length of the fund, which is 2 years, because we've got until March 25 to spend the money. So we don't know that immediately. Hopefully we will find out that. However, what we'll need to do, and what the team are doing now, is looking at programming year 1 across the remaining time that's left. What I will say, though, is the way this Levelling Up was set, the Shared Prosperity, not Levelling Up, now we're on a different fund. The way it was set is that year 2 was always the largest year, and year 1 was just to start schemes. So hopefully there's still enough time to make those starts and to move into delivery in the 2 years that are remaining. So hopefully that has provided some assurances. However, if we don't get the money rolled forward, we will have lost some of the momentum and some of the outputs we would have wanted deliver. And that's not just us, that'll be a lot of other authorities in the region as well. So we'll have to come back and have a conversation with you on that. That'll be a real shame because it will have been of no fault of our own. It's the way they've administered the grant, not the fault of the local authorities in place. And then with regard to the grants, I'm afraid I'm going to have to defer to Zach and Ian about how the funds, do they cover all or part? Because I'm not quite sure about that. But I can see I've got Ian on the screen. Chair, do you mind if we bring Zach and Ian in at this point?
Yes, I'm assuming although they're not next technically on the screen, they're answering the question, so yeah, they can come in next. So Zach or Ian, whichever one you wants to come in first.
I'll jump in one point, and I think Ian will certainly be able to expand and deliver better on this than myself. I think one thing that's important to note is the way the expenditure of this incoming money is structured. It's been structured to give us a certain amount of resilience. The hardest thing to do, and myself and Ian were having this conversation earlier as it happened on the phone, the hardest thing for us to do is to spend money when it involves us employing our own staff to deliver. Now, certain parts of this, you'll see, particularly the employability stuff, the Inspire stuff, there's a lot of BCPC employed staff that deliver those programs. But then, by and large, staff that have been with us previously on former European funded schemes that have been repurposed, remodeled, and changed to fit with the programs and work that we've now got. What we're not doing is creating lots of new themes where we need to employ people at short notice and deliver spend in a very short space of time. If that was the case, we would probably, well, almost certainly fail to spend an awful lot of this money. So what we have got is a mixture of employed people delivering certain themes, but also a lot of what we've seen today is grant delivery that's being given out and commission work. And by structuring it that way, there's a much better chance of spending the money in time, although there is still significant pressure. And at that point, I'll hand over to Ian.
Ian, thank you, Zach. Ian, you ready to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Ian, just right before we start, are you intended to answer Councillor Clark's point on? I've also got a point on that same item. It said with the exclusion of Maesteg Town Council from the schemes. It's the same, it's 3.8, this one that Councillor Clark highlighted. Can you address both of them, please?
Yeah, certainly, Chair.
Okay.
If I can just begin, Chair, if I may, Councillor Clark, you mentioned the name of the particular grant. Could you repeat that? Because obviously there's a couple of grants that got very similar names, if that's okay, Chair, if Councillor Clark could repeat the name of the grant.
It's the Bridgend Valley Placemaking Property Improvement Grant.
Yeah, okay. So you're referring to, bear with me, page
47,
47, 48.
48, yeah.
47.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Clark, if I draw your attention to the sort of top of page 48, you'll see there that the grant goes up to a maximum of 80% of the costs of any particular project. So it's 30,000 or 80%, if that makes sense. So that's the intervention rate for that particular fund. Each of the funds are slightly different, as you will have seen from the report, depending on kind of precedent of the grants the authorities run in the past, depending on availability of other funds from UK and Welsh Government, and also in terms of the sort of parity that we're aiming to try and get throughout Wales in terms of local government grants towards the business community. So that was the particular point on that one, Chair. Could you repeat your question? It was one, and if you could just point me in the right direction again of which page you're referring to.
It's page 48. It's directly above the 80% reasonable eligible costs statement, where it says Clinvigar Ogmore, excluding Maesteg Town Centre. That's there two or three times through the report.
So and Janine, do jump in if I get any of this wrong. What this relates to is we already operate an existing scheme with Welsh Government money, Chair. So what we can't be seen to do is duplicate the sorts of projects or indeed the areas being covered if the grants are intended to do the similar sort of thing. So what we're trying to do here with the Shared Prosperity Fund is essentially reach out into those areas where the Welsh Government funding doesn't currently enable us to go.
Very much, yeah. It would have been remiss for me not to ask that question, I think, being Clinby Valley councillor. I have councillor.
Chair, may I come in? Ian is absolutely correct there. It's the Transforming Towns grant that is available in my state, Bridgend and Puthcall, and we've used that to do many of the schemes, including the family value scheme in my stake. So Ian is correct, absolutely correct. So we use that scheme for the town centres. So this scheme excludes my stake, so it captures the other valleys.
Thank you very much. Councillor Melanie Evans, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, getting the camera up for you. Thank you. If I can draw your attention to 2.9 on page 45 and 46, please. I understand that RCT are the lead local authority for the UK SPF for Cardiff Capital Region. And Bridgend's allocation was 8.3% or 8.30%. Now, looking at the table that's been produced, we are ranked 8th in that table provided out of 10 authorities. However, in the 2021 census, Bridgend is ranked 3rd highest population increase, with only Newport, which has gained 11.79% from the Shared Prosperity Fund, and Cardiff that are ranking higher, and they've gained 15.01%. Why are we so low in the ranks reference the Shared Prosperity Fund ranking 8th compared to the population ranking 3rd? And also, why does RCT as lead authority have the greatest share at 16.20%, please?
Anybody?
Yes, but very good questions, actually. I'm going to bring in Ian to answer this. I know it's not to do with population, it's to do with socio-economic factors. I'm pretty sure it is. Ian might be correct me here. When this 8.3% came in, we ourselves as BCBC were concerned because the Shared Prosperity Fund is the replacement for the European funds that we used to receive. And our allocation here is much less than we had received previously. So we are concerned about that, but I will bring in Ian to give you the narrative behind the 8.3%, Councillor Evans, but we do share your concerns here.
Ian, please.
Thank you, Chair, and obviously echo everything Shanice's just said. And I'm sure, I've jumped in, but I'm sure the cabinet member who's on the call would probably say the same. And indeed, I believe the leader has written to the ministers as they've changed over the year, expressing Bridgend's frustration, disappointment, as well as officers we've been and indeed. Councillor Farr's aware through the Industrial Communities Alliance lobbying through the all-party parliamentary group who have looked at the succession of European money into Shared Prosperity Fund. So I think it's fair to say we're very unhappy about it. If I can go into statistics for a few moments, though, Chair, if you bear with me, I can hopefully explain, even if it doesn't satisfy the councillor. I'm sure all councillors concerned over this. Before Shared Prosperity Funds, as if you like a sort of temporary measure, UK government brought in a fund called the Community Renewal Fund. I'm sure councillors are aware, you've received various reports on it, and no doubt seen various projects take place throughout the county borough. That was done based on metrics that UK government tend to use, which unfortunately, in response to the councillor's query, focus more on per capita as opposed to per capita forecast. So you'll appreciate that's a difference between the population as it is today as opposed to the population is forecast to be in 5-10 years time, say. So that's a fundamental difference. So you add together the community renewal fund metrics, you add in the focus on per capita, and then you add in a little bit, which we would agree with, which is the Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation, and that is a UK government formula which they set throughout Wales. So the reason, broadly speaking, if you put it in layperson's terms, why RCT have ended up with so much more, why Cardiff have, is because they've got more population. to be blunt, Chair, because per capita takes 40% of the methodology. So you take an initial methodology, you take 40% out of it, the highest population gets the most and down the list, then you take 30%, you base it on the Community Renewal Fund, and then you take the final 30% and you base it on the Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation. And that's one of the reasons why Bridgends ended up with a lower than anticipated value. We challenged it with Community Renewal Fund, we've challenged it with Shared Prosperity Fund, and we will continue to challenge it in any future methodology used by UK government for any future funds.
Are you happy with that, Nora? Ooh, Melanie, sorry, Melanie. That explain it to you, Melanie? No answer. Okay, Councillor Betso, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And
Yeah.
if possible,
Thank you.
Okay.
and if possible, I'd like to just return to the line of question that Councillor Pratt started. I listened to the answers from both Janine and Zach, and I was a little bit concerned with the amount of times that hopefully was used as a word within the answers. And I don't know if our officers have been given any more assurances than being able to say hopefully to us. It sounds like it's a badly administered grant from central government that we've had to try and work around in order to try and manage money handed out to, as has been pointed out, to replace the European money. My question is, we are part of a 10 council group that this is administered by one lead council on. Have the other councils suffered the same problems as us? Were they told the monies at the same time? Have they managed it differently? Do we know what's happened in those other 9 authorities?
I bring Janine back in here. I thought Janine said they were, but let her speak for herself. Janine?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's I think you've hit the nail on the head, Councillor Black. So it's very difficult for us to be blunt, I suppose. But you are right. The scheme has been very challenging. I'm saying hopefully because I think with a bit of common sense, they will roll that money forward, because if they didn't give us the go-ahead to spend it until mid-January, then we had to get it, obviously the letters approved. You know, nobody can spend all of year one in 9 weeks. It's just not possible. So I'm hoping that common sense will prevail and they will roll the money forward. And I have to say hopefully, because I won't know till July. And again, you know, to have year one money that wasn't approved, and then they take till July to approve it for you to spend forward. Again, that's not really very satisfactory. It is what it is, really. I'm afraid, though, we have similar situations with other UK grants. They are fairly slow to come out. What's happened to the other local authorities? Well, some of the larger local authorities went at risk. They didn't wait for the official letter. I know that RCT and Cardiff started appointing people or started working on year one of the scheme ahead of that decision. They've got the resources to do it. Here in BCBC, as opposed to some of the smaller local authorities, we didn't have the resource, I'm afraid, or we're not able to bear the cost of that until we knew that the fund was agreed and in place, and we knew exactly how much we were having. So there are some of the larger authorities went ahead and did start year one. Again, smaller authorities didn't. So there will be a bit of disparity across the region, where some of them have spent year one and some smaller authorities like ourselves won't have. And we are the ones who are now asking for the money to put over to year two. And we've been told we will learn in July whether we're successful with that. So apologies, I'm using the word hopefully. I don't know any more yet. I'm hoping that money will come forward in July. It's been really difficult. We've done everything we've done our side. We've kept all the deadlines our side. And we are where we are with this scheme. So what we are doing is cracking on with the year two money we know we've got secured. And then hoping that in July we'll get the go-ahead to spend some of the year one money. So I hope that's given you a bit more detail.
Just so you know, Janine, my picking up on the word hopefully was in no way a criticism of any of our officers here. Probably as far as you're able to go, and perhaps as councillors we can be less blunt with our criticisms of the UK government and their administration of it.
Janine, very quickly. So, are there any councillors out there that have spent this money and still haven't secured the agreement that they're going to get the money? Is that what you're saying?
No. The agreement came in all together for because we
Right.
via RCT run the agreement for our region. They were nominated to run the agreement for our region. So we all got the agreement together, Chair. But
Right.
some of the larger authorities decided they weren't going to wait for the written agreement.
Right.
They were going to go ahead and implement at risk.
They took the
Well,
risk and
They took the risk.
Yeah,
They
okay.
took the risk. They may
Okay.
not have got the money, but the larger authorities such as Cardiff or RCT, well, they've got the resource to be able to do so. You know, in Bridgend, we can't spend money at risk, I'm afraid. We just don't have the money to do that. So we have to wait for the decision. And some of the smaller authorities in the region did the same as us. They waited for the money. And of course, it didn't come till the 11th hour, Chair, and then we couldn't spend it. So we should know in July whether we, a bit of common sense, you'd think they'd roll it over for us.
Thank you, Janine. Councillor Martin Williams. No, Councillor Bledsoe, your hand's still up. Councillor Williams, please. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Hang on a second. I'm on my phone. I can't usually drive this probably. Yeah, it was really similar to what Councillor Bledsoe just asked. But I think Councillor Bledsoe asked about whether other councils have experienced similar. I guess my development of that question is really, given that it's administered centrally through RCT and we are one of 10 within that sort of umbrella, as futile as it might be, have we acted as 10 to express our disappointment and make suggestions as to how things could be improved going forward? As I said, it might be futile, but you know, have we done that and used our collective might? Because there's talk of some of the largest councils versus Little Bridgend, but you know, together we have a bit more voice there. And a second question on this, I have other detailed questions about the grants and that, but I'll leave that for now, Chair. The other thing is given that we know, you know, who experienced that things are coming last minute like this, and I know resources are tight, but it's not as if the money would be spent and wasted. What it would mean is that if we used reserves, for example, to fund it, we'd be funding this instead of something else. Is it something, and it's perhaps beyond the Communities Directorate, is it something as a council we need to almost accept that this is the way it is and almost build up contingencies to allow us to proceed at risk? Because as I said, it's not as if the risk is that we'll spend it on this rather than something else. It's not as if the risk is that we'll spend it and it's gone forever because it's abortive cost. So I guess there's two questions there. Did we act as one? Did the 10 act as one to express concern? And have we considered as a council, and it may be rhetorical, that we restructure some of our funds to allow us to proceed at risk?
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm not sure if we did send a letter as one in the region. I'd have to check that with the team. I know that we certainly did as Bridgend. The leader was very exercised about it, and we sent letters to the ministers, and we have discussed this in the round. But I need to check, did we express it as one voice? Because again, you are right, the collective is hopefully stronger than just one. Albeit half the collective did quite much better than us. But Ian is putting his hand up, so I think he might know the answer to that, Councillor Williams. But the other one then about should we accept more risk? Yeah, I would like to be able to accept more risk in this council on a number of things. We are looking at our risk profile and looking at our procurement strategy and how we do things to be less risk averse. I think I'll leave it at that, because at the moment, until we have those written agreements, we don't proceed on an awful lot of schemes. And you are right, schemes take some time to come through the system, and when you know things are coming, for instance, I would like to go out to procurement at risk on certain schemes, as opposed to wait for grants to come in, you know, but acknowledge you're at risk. There are some things that we can do to try and speed things up, and that's conversations we are having. But I do agree with you there. Chair, can I bring in Ian to talk about expressing our concerns?
Councillor Pratt, you're next, but Ian's obviously answering the previous question. Okay, thank you.
Ian? Yeah, thank you, Chair. To answer the councillor's question, it was all 22 local authorities. It was through the WLGA, and yes, various meetings were and continue to be had with the minister and senior civil servants who are in charge of not just the Shared Prosperity Fund element, but all elements of the Levelling Up Fund, under which comes the Levelling Up Fund itself, Shared Prosperity, and the Community Ownership Fund, and its predecessor then the Community Renewal Fund, because all of them were affected in some shape or form by the speed at which this had to be created and kind of rolled out. If I may, Chair, just on the councillor's second point about at risk, I think that the landscape really has changed for us, actually, in ways which we were thinking it would, but now the kind of the reality of it, I think, is there for everyone to see as we've moved from European funding into more UK government-led funding, shall we say, in Wales. If I compare and contrast for a moment, Chair, under former EU funding, we of course were governed by a 7-year budgetary cycle and a set of priorities that were determined by collective agreement by the member states of the European Union. Where we are now is we are under a parliamentary and comprehensive spending review cycle, which of course everyone knows is shorter, and we are governed by a party political cycle. So essentially, the time period for delivery has shrunk, is the point there. What that causes challenge for is not only spending at risk when we know what programs are there to do and we're awaiting a funding letter, it also causes challenges in the preparation of programs and the bridging of programs. Because I'm sure members will have heard, and I'm sure use the phrase officers use often, is off the shelf, pulling projects off the shelf and being able to go to a fund ready to go. We don't have that resource in Bridgend. We're able to develop projects, reach REBA stage 2 or REBA stage 3 with propositions so that we're in preparation and ready for the next major capital fund, so they can be delivered in that shorter time frame. So I think that kind of is a degree of risk, as well as the one the council is referring to. The other point is we will more than likely see a gap or a bridge between this current Shared Prosperity or Levelling Up Fund programme and whatever comes next to replace it. So there will be an issue that all local government in Wales and UK will have to kind of get its head around. What do we do there? Do we let things stop, or do we bridge that gap to the new fund by using our resources? And that kind of goes to the councillor's point about, if this is good stuff, is it that we want to reprioritise our existing resources, either to run at risk at the start or to bridge between one fund and another? Because that is going to be an issue. I mean, it won't surprise members to know, myself, Janine and Zach now, our minds are firmly on that date of March 2025, because that will be on us before we know it. And at the moment, there is no indication what that programme is going to look like. I'm sure there's some questions on that later, Chair, but I thought I'd get in early. There is no indication yet what that programme will look like, because we've got a general election between now and then. So there's a lot to play for there. Sorry, Chair, I've taken a bit of a liberty there, but I just thought the councillor made a really interesting point, and I just wanted to sort of top and tail that point. Thank you, Chair.
It was a very comprehensive answer, yeah, and thank you.
Yeah,
Councillor Williams, Martin Williams, you happy with that response?
Yeah, that's fine, Chair. I do have some other questions, but I'll come back to those later.
Okay, I got Councillor Pratt is next, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I understand council's not wanting to spend at risk. So I suppose the question would be, at any point did you think that you get any less than 8.3% from UK government? Bearing in mind that it is a government grant, is it a risk, or is it just taxpayers' money being reallocated to different areas? Could the council afford to take that risk, having the assurity that it is coming from UK government, rather than waiting for that written approval? I mean, obviously, larger councils have done it. I mean, Councillor Williams has mentioned reserves. In my opinion, this money would be, barring some sort of global catastrophe, that this funding would be coming in, that there would be a valuable risk to take for the use of this money, knowing that it is coming in, though I do accept that it was very late in the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. Anybody would like to take that? Janine, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Pratt and Chair. That is a decision perhaps that we need to discuss with Cabinet and our finance colleagues. So maybe it could be a recommendation, Chair, that comes from this scrutiny, that in the future we, where things are delayed, we do look at the risk profile and, do capitalise on grants if we think there's some certainty would come forward. I mean, just to be clear, we programmed based on the amount of money that we had been given an indication we would get. So we put the programme of works together based on that 23, but we were waiting for the government to sign off that programme and to agree it and to give us the funding. So we did actually know the amount of funding we were going to get, but just we hadn't had our programme of work agreed or the funding amount agreed. So that was why we didn't start. But I'm sure we could put that forward as a recommendation if you felt that it would be useful, Chair. So we can consider that in the future.
Okay. Thank you, Janine. I'm going to go on to Councillor Ian Williams now, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just going to sort of really reiterate what Councillor Pratt has said regarding it's a calculated risk, surely, and we have quite a large reserve. And what would the implications be if we were to use that reserve and then replace the monies once the grant comes in? I don't see the point in having these reserves just sitting there all the time and everyone's saying we've got reserves. Surely they're meant to be used. So I just wondered
is that a question or a statement?
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering what the implications would be if we were to take money from the reserves,
right,
to pay for the schemes,
right,
and then replace it once the funding had come in.
Or what if it wasn't to come in then? The funding level would drop, the reserves would drop then, obviously, wouldn't they? To
yeah, but then you could put the money back into the reserve.
Okay, Janine.
Yeah, well, with regard to reserves, the councillor understands that all reserves are earmarked for particular schemes. So they sit as a reserve, but they sit as a dedicated scheme against that reserve. I'm trying to think of an example, really. So we have reserves sitting there for road resurfacing, for instance. Now, there's money put aside for that for the year ahead. Again, I'm afraid I almost can't answer this. We asked the question, could we work at risk, and the answer was no until we had the written agreement that the plan was approved. We were not allowed to proceed in BCBC. Now, I do understand the reason for that. Our MTFS is incredibly challenging in Bridgend. We don't have large amounts of money available. The Communities Directorate has had, as you're well aware, has had some very severe budget savings over the last 10 years, and I'm afraid I don't have that money available to move around. It would have to come from schemes that are earmarked, and you're right, Chair, if then we didn't get the money, then I've used money that I don't have for something else, another scheme. So in this situation, I'm afraid we were told to wait for the guarantee of the money to come through. So okay. I'm not sure how we can unpick that one. There was nothing we could have done as officers, but the decision that was taken was we cannot proceed at risk.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm thinking it might be a question between politicians and finance people, really, Janine. It's something that they'd have to come to an agreement to, isn't it? When the situation arises, I suppose. Councillor Williams, want to come back in quickly?
Yeah, I think from recollection, the last time I looked, we had roughly £11 million in unallocated reserves. Surely that amount could be used for these schemes to take them forward.
Yeah, I'm not best to answer this, Councillor Williams, to be honest with you. It's a finance question. However, what I will say is that we have to retain an amount by law of unallocated in times for emergency. So that unallocated reserve will be what we have to retain as a council by statute. I'm pretty sure, but again, you're best to ask that question to finance colleagues, really. But I'm pretty sure that's the explanation to that one. We can't touch that because it has to sit there for those emergency circumstances.
Okay, we will put a recommendation together around that point, Ian, right? I think is the best, because I think Janine it's difficult for Janine to answer that, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Janine.
Thanks for the question.
No
Sorry.
problem.
Thanks, Janine. Councillor Stephen Betso, is it? Yeah.
Agreeing with Councillor Pratt on this one. Apologies, John.
This first, Chair.
Listening to the conversation and the scrutiny here, we're not exclusively looking at risk on one side. There's risks to both, because I've picked up on the word hopefully. The strategy that we've chosen has risked it not being rolled over. That's a decision not in our hands. So I think moving forward as a scrutiny panel, we do need to put forward a recommendation that risk isn't looked at from the one side of it. It is a risk to spend that money before we had it in writing, but by doing so, we've opened up the risk of it not being rolled over and the money being completely lost. So I think as moving forward, we need to look at what the risk management is from both sides of it, because the political decision has obviously been made to not allow officers to go forward at risk. But we've risked losing it. We may not lose it, but we've risked losing it.
I think we need a finance officer in the meeting too, because it is difficult for Janine not being a finance thing. So yes, good. We will definitely do a recommendation around that area. Okay. I've got no further hands up here. Anybody? Anybody like to come in? Oh, Councillor Marty Williams, you did say you had another question. Thinking about it. I'm calling Councillor.
I thought the meeting was too short, Chair. No, joking aside, moving on to more.
Don't tell Alex that, for God's sake.
No, I wouldn't dare upset my namesake. Yeah, a couple of things. Just a bit more detail, really. The Community Feasibility Fund, unless I've missed it, that seems a little bit vague. What exactly is that, and who is eligible to apply for it? And similarly, the tourism. I've got a perfectly good set of notes in front of me, papers in front of me, and I've made my own notes because I can't read. But the Tourism Event Support Fund, again, a little bit more detail on that, and who can apply for that? Is it incorporated bodies, or is it, the community groups and so on and so forth? And is that the sort of thing, looking at opportunity, is that the sort of thing that our contribution to the Seniors Open could be actually funded from, instead of wherever it is? Are we being innovative in that way? But it's more about the detail of those two elements, please.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. The reception wasn't brilliant then, Martin, but we did get what you were saying, I believe. Janine?
Yeah, can I please ask Ian or Zach to come in on those funds?
Yeah, certainly, yeah.
Yeah, Zach, are you happy for me to go, Zach?
Yes, crack on, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Zach. So if I take the first one, the councillor questioned about the Community Feasibility Fund, it is actually quite deliberate to be set out as vague. What we're trying to achieve here, councillor and scrutiny, is offer an opportunity for community and voluntary organisations to do a level of detailed research into ideas and proposals that they may have that would require a reasonably significant level of resource. The reason for this is all too often we've experienced ourselves with our grant funds in the past, and where we've worked with community organisations through programmes like the Rural Development Programme, the resources haven't been there to help them develop the idea, either to a level of quality, quantity, or in sufficient time to be able to access external resources. So what this fund is trying to do is say we work with community group A who want to do, I don't know, let's say a pump track, for example, provide the resource to them to do that feasibility, develop that outline plan, develop the proposition, so that they are then equipped and empowered as an organisation with that knowledge and that material and that evidence to go forward and bid for external funds, and then hopefully access those external funds and bring them into the county. You'll notice, and I'm sure Scrutiny have picked up, there's also a similar fund there for businesses. And it's exactly that same point where businesses are considering an expansion, a new production line, a new product, or so on and so forth. It's the opportunity for us to work in partnership with those businesses to research that idea, see if it's got legs, see if it's something that they can actually themselves then take forward, or possibly, again, access Welsh Government or UK-led money to deliver those schemes. The other thing, and I'll draw Scrutiny's attention back to a point I made a moment ago in terms of off-the-shelf projects, because whatever shape Levelling Up Fund in its suite of projects and its suite of funds has, whatever shape the Levelling Up Fund itself turns into post March 2025, there will continue to be capital resources in one shape or another at a UK or Welsh level for community organisations to bid for. So what we're trying to do is empower our local supply chain, our local pipeline, if you like, of community organisations with that evidence and that proposition to then go forward to future funds. In terms of the events then, this is all event organisers. So it could be a small scale local event run by a community organisation, or it could be one of our existing events looking to grow or develop or target a new market. So it is everything and anything in between. You'll see there's two tiers in that. So one tier is intended for those smaller community-led events, if you like, and one tier is indeed intended for those bigger, more financially driven, shall we say, event organisers, with the value of money available between the two is different, and also the intervention, i.e. the amount of money the event organizer or applicant themselves has to put in order to secure the grant is also different. So hopefully, I haven't given many examples because I don't want to prejudice panel decision making, obviously, but ultimately that's the theme and the feel, Councillor, of what those two funds are trying to achieve.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Williams, you happy with that?
Yeah, thank you, thank you, Chair. I did have a further question, but it was on a different section, so I don't know whether you want me to do that now or to.
I got Councillor Colin Davis waiting quite a while.
No,
Come back. Can you come back in once he's been, please, Martin? Councillor Colin Davis, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, my two questions relating to marketing. Kind of related to, one of them's kind of related to the last question and answer. Can the team tell us a little bit about the relaunch of employability project next week, what your plans are, and also then in terms of the 5 grant programs, what kind of marketing you're going to do? Because it is a difficult one to sell, Ian, but I can see where you're coming from, so that's great. I'm all in favour of that. But yeah, just a little bit about how you intend rolling it out and attracting people, regarding next week's relaunch, and also then for the grant programs, about encouraging people and groups and organisations to come forward and apply. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Yeah, he named you then, Ian, so I'm assuming.
Janine, yeah, happy for me to.
Please do.
Thank you. Yeah, employability, a subject I know close to the councillor's heart. So yeah, the launch, I think we're badging it much more as a relaunch, shall we say? And obviously, I think councillors are aware and members are aware. An awful lot of the work of that team comes through referral from partner organisations, but also self-referrals. And what we are developing much more is closer links with our employers. So our employers are able to, for example, when we unfortunately have some redundancies, they're able to direct people in and we can very, very quickly push them out. So it isn't simply a case of relying on a launch event to publicise the work of the employability team, or republicise it, I should say. The existing referral mechanisms that we've had for the past 5, 7, if not longer years, we will continue within the new programme. So that's the point I would make there. In terms of then those community grants, to a later or a greater or lesser degree, a lot of the marketing for that has already been done. Now, if I kind of take you back, I think, to a point I sort of touched on earlier in answer to one of the questions, when we were developing the programme, we had to have as much confidence as it's possible to have about what the demand was out there. So I've talked about some of the grants already. So in shaping how they operate and what they're trying to achieve, we did do soft market testing with potential grant applicants, as I know every authority does whenever it's launching a new grant programme. So we already have talked to a number of potential applicants for all of the grant funds in shaping what would be required in terms of the eligible criteria, and also the scale of funding that would possibly see them being able to deliver projects that had impacts both in terms of growth and jobs. So there's the soft market stuff, and then from that we were able to kind of shape the values and the numbers and the outputs and the outcomes and so on and so forth with a reasonable degree of confidence around a potential pipeline. But Of course, it will go through all other traditional communication channels. So, you know, all of the channels at the council's disposal, as well as through the Bridgend Business Network. So the particular business funds, I mean, there's in the region of 1,000 businesses part of the Bridgend Business Forum. So they will all be targeted in relation to those business funds. So we've got established mechanisms where we will target the marketing for existing grants. With the community ones, a number of those grants will target the beneficiaries and communities we've worked with through the Rural Development Programme. And of course, there's offering opportunities now as well for town and community councils. And we're due to have a session with town and community council either in July or November. I'm not quite sure which meeting we're going to. So essentially, I suppose the point, Councillor, is every available mechanism that's there for us, we will target. But I am always happy to take suggestions if more specific routes are considered appropriate based on local knowledge of the day.
Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Ian.
Councillor David, your hand is set up. Is that legacy hand, is it? Yeah, thank you. Okay, there's no hands up now. Martin, do you want to come in with this last question before we wrap this up? No?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was in relation to 3.9, and it references a grant panel. It just says, I think from memory and my scrappy notes, it says something along the lines of a grant panel will be established. Could we have some more detail on who would sit on that grant panel, what the process for grants would be, and then presuming it's delegated, where that oversight would sit, please?
Janine? You answer that?
Yeah, can I ask Ian to come in on that, Chair, because he'll be looking after the panel.
Yeah, thank you. Ian again. You busy today,
Yeah.
Ian?
No, indeed. It's a good question. Thank you for asking it, Councillor. So we already have grant panels, plural, operating. So we've talked today about, for example, transforming towns and other grants we already operate as a council. So depending on terms and conditions of funding, we have to set these up from time to time, and they have to be appropriate to what the funders' criteria are. The intention here is to have an overarching panel that oversees all of the Shared Prosperity Fund grants under one roof, so to speak. Now on that panel, I think we've alluded to it in the report, and apologies if we didn't. You will see, for example, officers from my team, officers from regeneration, officers from wellbeing. We will also have officers from finance, and certainly at the beginning of the processes of the panel, possibly it might taper off, we'll have officers from legal. Those officers will be there to oversee and, I suppose, scrutinise and challenge the grant officers and their recommendations on approval or not of grant applications against set criteria. And it is a very factual process, I will stress that, because we publish our criteria as we do with procurement, for example. We say, you know, what good looks like and what good doesn't look like. So it's a very factual process, very, very objective in its carrying out. Then when it comes to the actual decision, the way we will be doing it, and this goes to Janine's point earlier about the cabinet report tomorrow. So what we've had to do is I think what legal colleagues referred to as a tweak of the scheme of delegation. Grants up to a value of £10,000 will be made under delegated authority by named officers under a scheme B2. Grants between £10,000 and £50,000, where the recommendation is to approve, will be made under delegated authority to Janine under scheme B1, which of course, as members are aware, is subject to call-in. And then grants over £50,000, if we get to that territory, will be made under scheme A. And you know, members are obviously very familiar with that. So in terms of oversight, it's fitting very neatly and clearly within our existing scheme of delegation. So hopefully that answers the question, Chair.
Thank you again, Ian. Very comprehensive answer. Martin, okay with that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I've got Councillor Nora Clark, please.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just come back to the property improvement grant, sorry to be labouring the point. It was mentioned that it's a maximum of 80% for reasonable eligible costs, and grants of 30,000 and 50,000. How do we encourage property owners to come forward And what happens to the money if we don't get enough property owners taking it up, because obviously they've got to find their own personal funds to add to the grant.
Janine?
Yeah, do you want me to answer? I'll have a go and I'll pass on to Ian now. Give Ian a little rest. Yeah, absolutely. That is a risk with all grant schemes, Councillor Clark. But in essence, an 80-20 intervention rate is very favourable, especially when a lot of these properties will already be wanting to do some work, but they won't be able to put all the funds together themselves. So what you normally find is a scheme will come forward and have raised some of the money, not all, and this will be a great help for them to bring that scheme to fruition. When we've launched schemes like this in the past, we've had more schemes apply than we can cater for. And we're hoping that will be the case this time around. Not to say that we don't want to fund everybody, because we do, but genuinely we would like to see, if we do the marketing right and get out there and speak to communities, we'd like to encourage people to come forward. So I don't think it'll be lack of applicants, if I'm honest with you, but it'll make sure we get the right applicants over the line. Now I don't know whether Ian wants to add to any of that, so I'll back up, Chair.
I have got Zach's hand up as well, Ian, if we'd like a little break for a second.
If we want to let him pause for breath, then,
yeah.
I'll chip in a little bit more.
Thank you,
again, it was just something and myself were talking about earlier, but one of the things is there's also a bit of flexibility between the themes as well. So, not just property, but if you picked any one particular grant scheme, if we did generally find, despite, the very best of promotion and encouragement, that one was undersubscribed, but another theme was slightly over, there is a little bit of flexibility that we could revisit this and maybe slightly remodel the emphasis between them as well. So that's one potential out. Again, though, I'm with Janine, an 80% grant towards something, that's pretty good. So hopefully that won't be a particular issue for this one, but we can have some flexibility to come back and revisit and say, well, actually this one's really taken off, there's loads of demand, this one less, so should we shift a little bit of the balance within the themes? Then that's something that is open to us going forward as well.
Thank you, Zach. Ian, do you want to come back in, or you?
Yeah, I can do, Chair.
Okay.
Just two very quick points. All of what we're doing has been shaped on engagement and need. So as far as we can be, we're aware of there being a demand for what has been shaped and what you see before you in the report today. However, it doesn't always play out as you planned. And one of the things we always do with grants that we run is, if we have an expression of interest that doesn't then translate into an application, we always informally engage with that business or community organisation to try and understand why. And I think it's perhaps an important point to make is that even though we have a short period of time, we not only have the ability to flex the money, as Zach's alluded to, we also have the ability to flex what the grants can and can't do and what intervention rates they can and can't offer. So I suppose the point here is, if nobody comes forward and then we can try and understand why that pipeline didn't translate, we can potentially change what these grant funds are doing, and albeit in a short period of time, and it'll have to be quite quickly done. But that opportunity, Chair, is there for us if that event transpires.
Okay, Ian, you happy with that, Nora?
Yes, thanks all for the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Melanie Evans, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, I'm all about collaborative work.
Councillor Evans, you're breaking up.
We are now diluting our responsibility and relying on.
Councillor Evans, we can't hear you. Sorry.
How can you?
Councillor Evans.
Sorry.
We can't hear you. Can you start again?
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
Right. Start again, please.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, whilst I'm all about collab, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, Chair.
No, it's okay.
Okay. Whilst I'm all about Okay, whilst I'm all about collaborative work in an enterprise, I do, however, wonder and have concerns whether we are now diluting our responsibilities and relying on volunteers and organisations to deliver such projects. How can you assure me that the support, the resources, and the right criteria will be robust to all who apply? And also, with regards to the grant panel, whilst I understand that the Directorate has been quite challenged with its resources of late, hence why we are approving minutes 9 months on, are you comfortable that you will be able to spread your resource to ensure that the grant panel will be effective without not completing all the rest of the work that this Directorate needs to do? Thank you.
Just a quick clarification there, Councillor Evans. The reason the report so late was a scrutiny problem rather than the communities directorate problem. They both short-staffed, and that so it wasn't the Directorate's issue that the minutes were late. Just to clarify that point. Janine, do you want to take the rest, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, I think just to assure Councillor Evans, the reason that we are undertaking this grant scheme with the voluntary sectors and with the smaller community groups is because they don't normally get access to funds such as this. So what we are trying to enable them to do, part of the Shared Prosperity Fund, is that you build resilience, you build economic development, and you get into those communities that formally don't get access to these type of funds. That's why it's put it, you know, the whole reason for the Shared Prosperity is to build that capacity. So some of the grant schemes that we've put together to enable people to put feasibility studies together, to enable them to go forward and apply for grants. Now, yes, we have a business development team that work with businesses that can help people put bids together, and that's a particular part of the Communities Directorate, and this is the work they do. So, I mean, you are right, we've got scarce resources right across communities. I've got 38 vacancies now in those specialist subjects, such as specialist areas such as structural engineers and highway planners. I've got issues with quantity surveyors and the like, but this is Yayan's team of business support officers who will be doing this work, and that's not to say they are hugely resourced, they're not, but they're specialists in just this work. So the reason it's not that we're relying on the smaller groups now, we are targeting them specifically in order that they can get a share of this prosperity fund for the first time ever, really, to get underneath these communities and see if we can encourage growth and events and sustainability going forward. So that's the reason for that. With regard to the grants and the panels, we've been running grants and panels for an awful long time now within the council. I'm pretty convinced we've got the right criteria and the right people to administer these grants. And as Yayan has said, we've gone out and spoken to the communities when we were putting this scheme together to see where they wanted assistance and to see that there was demand out there. More importantly, let's not run a grant if nobody wants it. So we've done quite a bit of research. People are ready for the grant. They're just waiting for the programme to start. So I'm hoping that the proof of the pudding will be in the eating, and you'll see once we set these grants out how we have targeted those areas, and you will see it bear fruit coming forward. So I hope that's answered most of those questions there, Chair. I think that got them.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Evans, you okay with that?
Yeah, Janine, thank you for that fully comprehensive response. I do really appreciate that. Can you throw some light on what communities you target and ask the questions with regards to these grants?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we worked with our employability sections, and we worked with the business forums and the town councils, and we asked these questions widely when we've been doing activities. I mean, I'm quite sure the Yayan can add more can add more information to that. But I'm pretty sure in all the work that they've done and all the grants that they're doing now, they speak to community groups, and we have quite good engagement in the main. I mean, I could probably send you a detailed letter with all of that in, Councillor Evans. I don't have it all to hand, but I know that they speak widely to the community groups that are out there. They work continuously with.
Thank you, Janine. Ryan, do you want to add anything to that, or is Ryan still?
No, nothing more to
Okay,
add, Chair.
you're happy with that, yeah? Okay, Councillor Evans?
Yeah, thank you, Janine. I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for the question. It's 17 minutes past now. I want to wrap this section up before 1:30 if we can, everybody, okay? I'm conscious that there'll be no questions to the Cabinet member this afternoon. Would anyone like to ask the Cabinet member any questions now while she's here? She sat there quite quietly for over an hour. Councillor Ian Williams? I don't want to put her on the spot, but I thought, she's sitting there quietly.
Thank you, Chair.
Very patient.
I've got a prior appointment and I'm going to have to leave very shortly, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Okay.
Whilst I'm on, I'd like to thank Councillor Farr for taking time out of her day as an invitee and turning up today for our scrutiny meeting.
Yeah, it's not her fault nobody asked her a question, in fairness. She sat there waiting to, fair play to her. I don't see any... I got Councillor Jonathan Pratt has indicated.
Thank you, Chair.
This one, I think it's all over.
No. As you've now given me the opportunity, I suppose my question was to officers directly, but I suppose it would be interesting to see what the Cabinet members' view over, I suppose, risk from a UK government grant, and whether, as a Cabinet member, she would have taken that risk, or would she have waited for the money to be approved? If I can be cheeky, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, she's not a just to bear in mind, she's not a finance officer, mind, right? So, but her opinion is welcomed. Go ahead, Neil.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. I'll see you outside. I mean, it's been really good sitting here, listening to the questions and listening to the responses, and I really like the proposal that Councillor Bledsoe made about looking at both risks. I'm not sure if we did that.
Well,
So I think that's a recommendation would be very, very welcome, and it is something I'll take back to the Cabinet. So thank you for that, Councillor Bledsoe.
Okay. Have you got an opinion on the risk yourself, Nilo? I'm trying to put you on the spot here now on Councillor Pratt's behalf.
I'm not going to give you an opinion because I know how we are struggling with managing our budget.
Yeah.
We've got crisis in social services, which means that some of the services in the communities are going to be affected.
Yeah.
And yeah, if we were a big authority, we had the money, then personal opinion, I would have taken the risk. That's what you want to know, don't you?
Well, that's fair. That's fair. You've made that's a bold statement.
But I think it's looking at both.
But it's something we can look at, isn't it? And see, and get advice on from finance, because we none of us are experts in finance, really, are we? Okay. I don't. Zach, Zach, please.
Yeah, just another point of view on the risk position. Whilst I personally do think, once an announcement has been made and we broadly know a sum of money is going to come our way, I'd be the sort of person that would spend at risk, because it's pretty assured, ahead of an agreement. But I suppose, in the absence of having a finance officer here that might take a more cautious view, I suppose I've been thinking about it as we're all chatting, and we do live in a world now where we've seen really radical things, like the pandemic happen overnight that caused a drain on local and national finances that could never have been envisaged, to the scale that it had. And if we have gone ahead and spent what is millions of pounds, and then circumstances change and an agreement hadn't been signed, that risk could become very real if something really significant happened that meant funds had to be diverted to something else. So whilst personally I think actually spending at risk whilst announcements have been made is something I would support myself. I fully appreciate those have to be very balanced decisions that are made, with every scenario thought out and significant thought goes into it. So yeah, just my thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. And again, thank you for being honest, and actually putting an opinion out there. It's your opinion at the end of the day, isn't it? It's not, policy. It's not, okay. There's no further hands up anyway. And I'm going to say it's 20 past now. So we're giving it a good air. And I think, yeah, you go in, Ian, yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you for your attendance, Ian. It was much appreciated. Thank you. There are no further questions. So if you're not required now, we're going to move on to the next agenda. You're free to stay or to leave the meeting now. Thank you to the officers and
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. And the cabinet member, of course. Okay. We can knock out the conclusion recommendations, but before 5:30, I think, Lucy, can we? So we move on to item 5 now. Give Neil a chance to pack the stuff out. Don't rush, Neil, it's okay. We move on to item 5, conclusions and recommendations, where we're pretty sure what one's recommendation is going to be, I think, or the line it's going to take. So we're going to. Anybody got any ideas on wording on this recommendation, or the way it should? Mr. Bledsoe? Mr. Pratt? Lucy is going to give us her vision of this recommendation, then we go from there, is it? And
I'll just summarise some of the key points just to remind the committee. So, there was obviously lots of discussion around the agreement for the UK SPF not being received and signed off, and the disappointment and how it was acted upon. So following Councillor Pratt's questioning then regarding risk and allocation, there was discussion around the Directorate to consider risk profile and capitalising on grants. I'll link these all together. They might need to be separated, but then Councillor Ian Williams, I think it was, questioned the use of reserves whilst awaiting confirmation and written agreement of the grant funding. And Councillor Bledsoe also said then at looking at the risk from both sides. I don't know if there's a recommendation or recommendations in there.
Anybody? I got Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm not going to re-go over the argument, of course, but I mean, 12%. So I know Councillor Evans said, why only 8.3? That money doesn't roll over. We're now down to 7.3 or 9.96, I think, 0.996 if I got my maths right. So we've lost a large chunk of money. I think, yes, okay, we can go back to COVID-19 and, the errors there, but we can't say don't do anything because the next apocalypse may be around the corner. I think, I think Cabinet and finance officers really have to look at this seriously from a political perspective, that UK government have made this announcement that we're going to receive 8.3. If we receive any less than that, politicians will start going mad. It's, oh, hang on, that's not what we had. I mean, if we took a risk that, instead of 23 million, we'll spend 25, and I'm sure we can persuade the UK government to give an extra 2 million. That is a big risk. But this is the money that they said they were going to give us. I would say you can't get much surer than the UK Treasury, and that's not a political statement. It's a government institution. So I think it's a risk that we can afford. So I do think that our finance should really be looking at this, going, it's coming in. It may not come in when we like it, but we can at least start the process.
So how do we formulate a wording for a recommendation? This is the tricky bit here, I think, isn't it? Are we going to recommend that it's looked at and discussed? How do we word that?
I think whether it's, sorry, I'm jumping again. Whether we reassess whether any government grant carries a substantial amount of risk, common to any other grant that we may apply for, that we could, 9 times out of 10 consider this a sure thing, and that we can progress forward with it, knowing that it's been announced, knowing that they've given an exact figure to the pound, and that though we are waiting for the sign off,
They've crossed
we
the
could go
T's,
ahead.
but they haven't dotted the I's.
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
thing,
you know, if they've crossed T's, don't worry about the I's, you know what I mean? You know, but don't go overboard, obviously.
I got two other waiting to come in now, Councillor Pratt. I'll bring Martin Williams in next, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No camera now. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, to try and build on what Councillor Pratt has said. I mean, my form of words would be something like that we request or we recommend that you know, mechanisms for managing risk or for allowing projects to continue where funding has been agreed in principle but is not yet formalized are reviewed and reported back. Because really, I mean, what we're talking about is liquidity, isn't it? We're talking about providing finance in the interim. Well, we've got, you know, I don't want to point to reserves necessarily, but we've got a lot sitting there, which some of it isn't going to be touched for a couple of years, you know, and so I don't want to give the answer, but the question is, please go away and find a way of providing short-term funding for those projects that we have a high degree of certainty will be funded from external sources.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. Councillor Stephen Bledsoe.
Thank you, Chair. And listening to the debate, and I found this one to be a very productive one, actually. From what I've taken out of today, we've mitigated the risk that the money wouldn't come in because we didn't go ahead and spend it when we were given the verbal that we were going to have it. We wanted that letter. But from what Councillor Farr said right at the very end, and from what some of the officers have said, we didn't consider the risk of it not being awarded in year 2. We are hopeful it will be, but that was a risk. And this council, everything it does is on risk. And we have addressed the risk that we are exposed to on inter-council lending. You know, we've addressed that. We've looked at that. That's extremely low risk, but the word risk is still there. There was a risk that if we went ahead and did programs and spent the money before we had the written confirmation that we wouldn't have it in time, we were exposed to that risk. The route that the Cabinet have taken has exposed us to the risk that the government may not roll it over into year 2. From what I've heard today, I don't think that was considered in the thought process. I don't think it was raised from what Councillor Pratt asked Councillor Farr at the end there. I may be wrong, but that's the distinct impression I got, is that that risk wasn't considered. Yeah. And I think that we could build something here to ask that question, was that risk considered? Moving forward, can we ensure it's considered in future decisions?
Can you make sense of that, Lucy? Anything like that?
Lots of people ask if they can make sense of what I say. Jeff.
No, I just produce. I mean, all the contributions there, Councillor Beth is referring to. So
I've made a note of it all, so we'll get something.
Yes. Okay. We can't get it together now, and then no, we have to put. We need to agree it here, don't we? The wording, really, don't we? You know, Councillor Clark, please.
Yes, can I just add to that, Chair, that when BCBC are aware of the outcome of the year 1 monies, that we as a committee are told whether that's been allowed or not.
So yeah, we can put that down as a.
You know, if we're informed, so that we know that it has been you know, allowed.
A request for information, basically, isn't it? That was.
Yeah, but yes.
Yeah, no problem.
Otherwise, it could be, you know, ages before we know anything.
Councillor Melanie Evans, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Whilst I do agree, I think the risk should have been assessed on both sides to give a more balanced view. I also think it takes a very brave individual on the challenges that we've had to actually get a balanced budget by having to increase the council tax by even 4.9% this year, you know, so everything obviously we need to take into consideration. But I do agree that the risk on both sides should be considered going forward.
I almost thought you was going to go against it then, Councillor Evans, but you just redeemed yourself at the end. Well done. Yes, we're all is everyone in agreement that we formulate a recommendation along this topic?
Aye.
Yeah, so it's agreed anyway. So if you see.
What I can do, Chair, is if I get, I'll take all this information and get it together, and then I can sent out and
we can sort of
have the committee to agree.
we'll email them.
Yeah.
Yeah, is everyone happy with that?
Okay.
It's a bit of an effort to word it all by you now, and we might get it wrong rather than take a bit of time over it, and we can agree it. In principle, we've agreed to do it. That's all matters here now today, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. It's 17:31. I'm going to call a 5-minute break just to. Oh, sorry, Councillor Martin Williams, you missed that.
Sorry, Chair, I've messed that up for you now, haven't I? But is there another, I completely agree, but is there another recommendation? Something that struck me is that we've got another set of grants to be applied for now. And I'm thinking with a community council hat on, you've got the community fund, and then presumably community councils are potentially eligible for some of these grants and other bodies. Could we just recommend that there's a review of grants and how they're communicated out so that it's not scattergun, that there's a consistent and comprehensive way of inviting stakeholders and partners to apply for things, so that people are clear what's available and how to apply. That's all.
Yeah, I can't see any objection to that, Martin. Anybody object to that? No. Okay. You see, you got that, yeah? Yeah. Any other recommendations then we can think of before I call for this 5-minute break? We'll come back then and do corporate parenthood champion and forward work programme. Martin's a legacy on Martin, is it? When you're on the phone, I know. Okay.
Yeah, legacy chair.
Yeah, cheers, Martin. It's now 17:33. It's 5 minutes long enough, or I think it is, isn't it? Yeah. Quick 5 minutes. So 17:38, please. See you then. Thank you. Do I put it on?